Welcome to our deep dive into Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
It's dense.
a dense book. It's not like a light.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Not a beach
a
read.
beach read, but it's so fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
It's an exploration of how our minds work.
Yeah.
And not just for psychologists,
Yeah.
for
It's really for
anyone who makes decisions,
anyone. Yeah, for everyone.
which is all of us, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're all making decisions all the time.
Excellently.
So we're going to try to untack Kahneman's groundbreaking dual system theory.
Okay.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand
Yes.
how your own thoughts and actions are shaped by these two systems.
I love how what's
Yeah.
really fascinating about Kahneman's approach is that he doesn't just describe these systems.
Correct.
He backs them up with decades of research and some incredibly clever experiments.
Totally, yes.
He really reveals the hidden machinery of our minds.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Kahneman argues that our thinking is guided by two systems. System 1, the fast thinker,
Right.
and System 2, the slow thinker.
Hmm.
Have you ever just known the answer to something instantly without even thinking about it?
Like
What's 2 plus 2?
right, or
Yeah.
yeah, no, totally.
Like you just know it.
Automatically.
Yeah.
That's system 1 at work.
Exactly.
It's our intuitive automatic system,
Right.
always running in the background, effortlessly handling everyday tasks.
Yeah.
Think of it like your autopilot.
Okay.
It's what allows you to recognize faces,
Mhm.
understand simple language,
Right.
or even react quickly in a dangerous situation.
So it's like our survival mode almost.
In a way, yeah,
Keeps us from having to overthink every little thing.
right.
But if it's always on, does that mean we're basically on autopilot most of the time?
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And that's where things get interesting, because System 1 relies on what we call heuristics. Mental shortcuts that help us navigate the world efficiently.
Uh-huh.
But here's the catch. These shortcuts, while usually helpful, can sometimes lead to predictable errors in judgment.
Oh.
We call those cognitive biases.
Uh-huh. So that's where System 2 comes in.
Exactly.
To save the day.
To save the day.
Okay.
System 2 is our slower, more deliberate
Oh.
analytical system.
Got it.
It requires effort and concentration. Like
Mhm.
when you're solving a complex math problem
Right.
or learning a new skill.
Like I'm using System 2 right now to try to understand what you're saying.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay.
So think of System 2 as the pilot who takes over from the autopilot when things get complicated or require conscious thought.
Okay, so like our inner Sherlock Holmes,
Yes.
carefully analyzing the evidence before making a judgment.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
System 2 is
Uh-oh.
a bit lazy.
Okay.
It prefers to let System 1 take the lead whenever possible.
Even when it might not be the best idea?
Exactly.
Oh, no.
So we're basically wired to go with our gut feeling,
Hmm.
even if it might lead us astray.
Okay, so
It's not always a bad thing.
Okay.
Intuition can be incredibly valuable, especially in situations where we need to make quick decisions.
sure. Yeah.
But the key is to be aware of when our intuition might be leading us down the wrong path.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these cognitive biases then.
Okay.
These mental traps that our System 1 can lead us into.
Exactly.
You mentioned the halo effect earlier.
Yes. The halo effect is a great example of how System 1 can bias our judgment.
Okay.
It's the tendency to let our overall impression of someone, like their attractiveness or charisma,
Right.
influence our evaluation of their other traits.
Oh, okay.
So if you find someone charming and likable,
Huh?
you might also assume they're intelligent and trustworthy,
Right.
even if you have no real evidence to support that.
So first impressions really do matter.
They do.
But it's not just about looks, right? I remember reading about an experiment in the book where Kahneman asked people to estimate the percentage of African nations in the UN.
Ah, yes, the anchoring effect.
Yeah.
A classic demonstration of how easily our judgments can be swayed by seemingly irrelevant information.
Tell me about it. In the experiment, they spun a wheel of fortune, rigged to land on either 10 or 65,
Right,
before asking people for their estimates.
right.
Obviously, a wheel of fortune has nothing to do with UN membership.
Yeah.
But what happened?
Okay, so the people who saw the wheel land on 10 guessed, on average, that 25% of African nations were in the UN.
Hmm.
Those who saw it land on 65 guessed 45%.
Wow. Uh-oh.
Their estimates were completely pulled towards that random number they saw,
Just because they saw that number first?
even though it was totally meaningless in this context.
So the first piece of information we encounter, even if it's random, acts like an anchor,
Like an anchor. Yeah.
influencing our subsequent judgments.
Uh-huh.
That's incredible.
It's powerful.
It makes you wonder how many of our decisions are based on these subtle anchors we might not even be aware of.
Absolutely. That's the power of understanding these biases.
Yeah.
Once you start seeing them,
Yeah.
you realize how much they influence our thinking.
Okay, so we've got the halo effect
Okay.
and the anchoring effect.
Yes.
What other mental pitfalls should we be watching out for?
Well, another fascinating one is the availability heuristic.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how after watching a movie about shark attacks, you suddenly feel like sharks are lurking everywhere?
Oh, yeah.
Even if you live miles from the ocean.
Totally. I'm way more likely to check for monsters under the bed after a scary movie marathon.
Exactly. That's the availability heuristic at work.
Okay.
We tend to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled or vivid in our minds.
Mm-hmm.
If something is easy to imagine or we've recently been exposed to it, it feels more probable,
Right.
even if it's statistically rare.
So dramatic news stories can really skew our perception of risk.
Absolutely. It's why we might worry about plane crashes, even though statistically, driving is far more dangerous.
Yeah.
Plane crashes are rare, but they're highly publicized and emotionally charged, so they stick in our minds.
Right. It's like our brains are playing tricks on us,
Totally.
making us fear the wrong things.
Yes.
This is starting to make me a little paranoid about my own intuition.
Don't worry, it's not about becoming distrustful of your intuition altogether.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that System 1, while incredibly efficient, isn't always accurate.
Right.
And that's where System 2 comes in to help us pause,
Mm.
analyze,
Yeah.
and make more informed judgments.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Good.
So next time I find myself making a snap judgment,
Yes.
I'll try to remember to engage my inner Sherlock Holmes
Yes.
and see if there are any biases lurking in the shadows.
Exactly. And the more we understand these biases, the better equipped we are to overcome them.
Okay.
But we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, no.
There are many more fascinating biases that Kahneman explores in his book, and we'll delve into those
All right.
next time.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm ready for more.
Yeah, me too.
Let's do it. Welcome back.
All right.
So we are deep in the world of thinking fast and slow,
Yes.
exploring how our minds can be surprisingly susceptible to these cognitive biases.
Right.
We've already talked about the halo effect,
Uh-huh.
the anchoring effect,
Yeah.
and the availability heuristic.
Yeah.
It's like amazing how much our intuition can be swayed by these mental shortcuts.
Yeah, and you know what's even more fascinating
that?
is that these biases don't just affect our everyday judgments.
Right.
They can have a profound impact on our decision-making,
Hmm.
especially in areas like finance.
You mean like how we invest our money?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm always trying to,
Yeah.
make smart financial choices.
Right.
But sometimes I feel like,
Yeah.
my emotions get in the way.
Your emotions, yeah.
Yeah.
That's precisely what Kahneman addresses with his prospect theory.
Okay.
He challenges traditional economic models that assume people are always rational actors.
Uh-huh.
In reality, our decisions are often driven by emotions,
Right.
particularly our aversion to loss.
Loss aversion. What does that mean?
It means we feel the pain of a loss
Okay.
much more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Hmm.
Imagine losing $100.
Okay.
Wouldn't that feel worse than the joy of finding $100?
Yeah, now that you mention it, yeah.
Right.
I would be so mad at myself if I lost $100.
Exactly.
But if I found $100, it would just be like,
And surprise.
oh, that's cool. Lucky day,
Exactly. And this loss aversion can lead us to make irrational decisions,
Mm.
like holding on to losing investments for too long, hoping they'll bounce back,
Right.
even when it's statistically unlikely.
Oh, so you're saying I shouldn't hold on to these?
It's like we're trying to avoid the pain of admitting defeat,
Oh.
even if it means losing even more money in the long run.
I've definitely been there. It's that feeling of
You get attached.
I've already invested so much I can't back out now.
Yeah.
Even when, maybe deep down it's probably the wrong move.
That's the sunk cost fallacy in action. We
Yeah.
become so attached to our past investments,
Mhm.
whether it's time, money, or effort,
Yeah.
that we continue down a path even when it's clearly not in our best interest.
So how can we overcome this loss aversion
Yeah.
and avoid falling into these traps?
Right.
Should we just try to become emotionless robots
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to money?
Not necessarily. It's about recognizing
Yeah.
that these biases exist
Right.
and taking steps to mitigate their influence.
Okay.
One strategy Kahneman suggests is to think about your investments as a portfolio,
Okay.
rather than focusing on individual gains and losses.
Hmm.
By broadening your perspective, you can reduce the emotional impact
Okay.
of those daily fluctuations and make more rational decisions
Right.
that are aligned with your overall financial goals.
That's a great tip. Like taking a step back,
Yeah.
looking at the big picture
Right.
instead of getting caught up in like the moment-to-moment
Daily drama.
of like the stock market.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about how these biases can affect our financial decisions.
Mm-hmm.
What other areas of life do they impact?
Or just about everything,
Okay.
from our relationships to our career choices.
Mm-hmm.
These biases are constantly shaping our perceptions
Yeah.
and influencing our actions.
Right.
Think about confirmation bias, for example.
Confirmation bias. Ah, yes. The tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs,
Right.
even if those beliefs might be wrong.
Exactly.
I know I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of only reading like news articles that align with my worldview.
Especially with social media algorithms
Right.
constantly feeding us content
That we already agree with.
that we already agree with. So
Yeah.
it's easier than ever to get stuck in these echo chambers
Right.
where our beliefs are constantly reinforced, even if they're not accurate.
Yeah.
Kahneman emphasizes that this bias can be particularly strong when it comes to emotionally charged topics,
Oh, okay.
like politics or religion.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah,
When we're passionate about something, it's like harder to be objective.
totally.
You know, we're more likely to cling to our beliefs even when presented with evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do we break free from these confirmation bias bubbles?
It takes conscious effort.
Okay.
One strategy is to actively seek out diverse perspectives, even those that make you uncomfortable.
Okay.
Read articles from sources you typically disagree with.
Right.
Engage in respectful conversations with people who hold different views.
Yeah.
Be willing to challenge your own assumptions.
Okay.
It's not about abandoning your beliefs, but about strengthening them by exposing them to scrutiny
Oh.
and different viewpoints.
That's such a valuable reminder. It's so easy to just surround yourself with people who think just like us.
Right.
But that can really limit, I think, our growth and understanding of the world.
Totally. It's like that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
And remember, it's not just about the information we consume. It's also about how we process that information.
Oh, okay.
Kahneman points out that our minds tend to be much more receptive
Okay.
to information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Right.
We're more likely to remember details that support our views
Uh-huh.
and conveniently forget those that challenge them.
It's like our brains are playing favorites.
Totally.
So how can we overcome this inherent bias?
Well, one technique is to consciously try to see things from the other side's perspective
Okay.
before dismissing an opposing viewpoint.
Right.
Take a moment to really consider their arguments. Try to understand why they might hold that belief. It might not change your mind,
Right.
but it can help you develop a more nuanced and empathetic understanding of the issue.
That's a great idea. It's like putting on a different pair of glasses
Yes.
and seeing the world through someone else's eyes.
Exactly.
It might not always be comfortable, but it can be like incredibly eye-opening.
Yes, and it's important.
Okay, so we've talked about confirmation bias.
Okay.
What other mental traps should we be aware of?
Well, another fascinating one is the conjunction fallacy.
The conjunction fallacy. Okay.
It's the tendency to think that a combination of events is more likely than one of the events alone, even though that's logically impossible.
Okay, that sounds a bit mind-bending. Can you give me an example?
Yes. Kahneman famously illustrated this with what's called the Linda problem.
The Linda problem.
Okay. Imagine you're given a description of Linda.
Okay.
She's 31, single, outspoken, and very bright.
Okay.
She majored in philosophy and was deeply concerned with issues of social justice. Now, which of these statements is more likely? Linda is a bank teller.
Oh.
Or Linda is a bank teller and active in the feminist movement.
Well, based on the description you gave me,
Yeah,
it definitely sounds like she could be active in the feminist movement.
right.
So I'd say the second statement is more likely.
That's what most people say.
Ah.
But logically,
Yeah.
the broader category, Linda is a bank teller,
Hmm.
is always more likely.
Okay.
It's impossible for the conjunction of two events to be more probable
Right.
than one of the events alone.
Okay.
But because the description fits our stereotype of a feminist,
Right.
our system one jumps to the conclusion that the more specific, detailed scenario
Right.
is more likely.
So we're basically tricked by the vividness of the description.
Yes.
It fits our mental image of Linda so perfectly
Exactly.
that we ignore basic probability.
Uh-huh.
It's like our intuition overrides our logic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this bias can have real-world consequences.
Okay.
It might lead us to make poor decisions based on overly specific predictions or scenarios when the broader, less exciting possibilities are statistically more probable.
So the next time I'm tempted to bet on a long shot because it just fits a really compelling narrative,
Yeah.
I'll remember the Linda problem
Yes.
and think twice.
Yes. That's it.
It's amazing how these seemingly simple biases can have such a powerful impact on our thinking.
It's the beauty of studying cognitive psychology.
Yeah.
It reveals the hidden workings of our minds
Right.
and helps us understand why we make the decisions we do.
Yeah.
But understanding is just the first step.
Okay.
The real power comes from applying this knowledge
Right.
to improve our decision-making and lead more fulfilling lives.
Okay. Sounds good.
And we'll explore some practical techniques for doing just that next time.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on this fascinating journey exploring Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Uncovering all those little biases.
All the hidden biases that shape our decisions. It's incredible, really.
Yeah, it's like a backstage pass to the theater of our minds,
Totally, yeah. Seeing all the mechanisms at work.
All the levers and pulleys.
Right, exactly. So now that we've kind of seen how easily our intuition can be swayed,
Right.
let's talk about how we can actually use this knowledge to make their decisions.
Yeah, how to apply it.
In the real world, yeah.
Absolutely.
Out there in the wild.
In the wild, exactly.
So one of the, I think, most powerful takeaways from Kahneman's work is the importance of slowing down and engaging system two.
That deliberate analytical part.
Yeah, that deliberate and analytical part of our minds.
Yeah.
We've talked about how system one is always running the show, making those quick, intuitive judgments
Always on. Yeah.
in the background. But when it comes to the important decisions, we need to kind of hit the pause button.
Hit the brakes.
Yeah, and let system two take the wheel.
Take over.
So instead of just going with our gut feeling,
Right.
we should take the time to gather information,
Yes.
weigh the options, and really think things through.
Exactly. It's about resisting that impulse to just jump to a conclusion and instead engage in a more thoughtful, deliberative process.
But isn't that slowing down and engaging system two all the time, isn't that kind of impractical?
You're right. You can't analyze every decision.
Right. We make so many decisions all day long.
Yeah, you'd be paralyzed.
I know.
It's about finding a balance.
Okay.
For everyday, low-stakes decisions.
Right.
It's fine to let System 1 do its thing.
Sure.
But when the stakes are higher,
Okay.
when the decision has significant consequences, that's when it's crucial to engage System 2.
So it's like choosing your battles wisely,
Yeah.
knowing when to rely on intuition and
Right.
when to call in the big guns for some serious analysis.
Exactly. And there's some practical techniques that can help you do just that.
Okay, what are they?
Well, one strategy Kahneman suggests is to use objective decision tools.
What kind of tools are we talking about?
It could be as simple as creating a pros and cons list
Right.
to more structured frameworks like decision matrices or algorithms. The key is to find ways to introduce more objectivity into the process,
Okay.
especially when emotions are running high.
That makes a lot of sense because when we're stressed or excited,
Yeah.
it's easy to let our biases take over.
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely.
So having a structured approach can really help us stay grounded
Yes.
and make more rational choices.
Yes, it's like having a set of guidelines to follow, even when our intuition is pulling us in different directions.
Right, exactly. It's like having a map
Yeah.
to guide you through a complex terrain, even when the path ahead seems unclear.
That's a great analogy. I like that.
Okay, so objective decision tools. Got it. What other strategies?
Another key takeaway from Kahneman's work is the importance of understanding the power of framing.
Framing.
We touched on this earlier with prospect theory and how the way a choice is presented
Right.
can dramatically influence our decisions.
Like how we're more motivated to avoid a loss than to achieve an equivalent gain.
Exactly.
It's like that classic example of the glass half full or half empty.
The classic.
It's the same amount of water,
Same amount.
but the way it's framed
Right.
changes our perception of it.
Exactly. And Kahneman shows how even subtle changes in wording or context can have a significant impact on our choices.
Interesting.
So, the next time you're faced with a decision, take a moment to consider how the options are being presented.
Okay.
Are there any biases built into the framing? Are there alternative ways to view the situation?
It's like taking a step back and kind of questioning the assumptions
Yeah,
that are like baked into the way a choice is presented.
the way it's presented to us.
Yeah, we need to become more aware of those subtle influences that can kind of
Yeah,
shape our thinking.
absolutely. It's about becoming more critical thinkers,
Mhm.
questioning the status quo, and not just accepting things at face value.
Right.
And remember, this applies not just to external decisions, but also to the way we frame our own thoughts and experiences.
Oh.
How we interpret events, the stories we tell ourselves, can have a profound impact on our well-being.
That's so true. It's like change your thoughts, change your life.
Yeah, exactly.
We can learn to like reframe negative experiences in a more positive light. It can have a huge impact on our overall happiness.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of Kahneman's work,
Okay.
his exploration of the two selves,
The two selves.
the experiencing self and the remembering self.
Ah, yes. The experiencing self lives in the present moment, like feeling all the joys and sorrows of life as they happen. And the remembering self is the one that kind of looks back on those experiences and
forms the narrative.
yeah, forms the narrative of our lives.
Precisely. And what's interesting is that these two selves often have different priorities. The experiencing self might prioritize pleasure and comfort in the moment,
Right.
while the remembering self might value meaning, growth, and accomplishment over time. And often we tend to prioritize the remembering self.
Even when it might not lead to like the most happiness in the moment.
Potentially, yes.
That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
It explains why we might sometimes make choices that bring us like short-term pleasure but long-term regret.
Right.
We're so focused on creating a good story, for our remembering self.
For the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we like neglect the needs of our experiencing self.
Exactly. So one of the keys to happiness, according to Kahneman, is to find a balance between these two selves.
Okay.
To be more mindful of the present moment, to savor the good experiences as they happen, not just focus on how they'll fit into our life story later on.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder to like slow down and appreciate the little things.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in like the past or the future
Right.
and miss out on like the beauty of what's happening right now.
The present moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And remember, our memories are not always reliable.
Ooh, interesting.
They're shaped by our biases, our emotions, and the stories we tell ourselves.
Right.
So while it's important to reflect on our experiences, it's also crucial to recognize that our memories might not always be an accurate representation of what actually happened.
It's like our memories are almost like filters,
Yes.
kind of shaping our perception of the past.
Exactly.
And sometimes those filters can be pretty distorted.
Totally.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up
Okay.
our deep dive into thinking fast and slow.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've covered so much today, from those fascinating cognitive biases.
All those mental shortcuts.
Yeah, to the intricacies of decision making.
Yeah.
And even, we even touched on the nature of happiness itself.
How to live a good life.
Yeah, exactly. It's been like this incredible journey of self-discovery.
Yep, totally.
A glimpse into, the inner workings of our minds.
Hidden machinery.
Right, exactly. And we hope you'll take these insights with you.
Yeah.
Use them to, challenge your own assumptions.
Challenge your thinking.
Make more conscious and informed choices in all aspects of your life.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those mental muscles flexing and happy diving.
Keep thinking.